Welcome back. It's Beyond the Box Score. I'm Dan Schneier, joined as always my co-host Jacob Gibbs. And Jacob, today we're doing running back rankings. We're going to be looking at both of our rankings, composite rankings, debating players. And let me start you off with this, Jacob. Of all my running back rankings I sent you, what was my most egregious ranking?
Bucky Irving. You
What?
already know. You know it's coming.
Come on. I'm ready for the heat, Jacob. I am ready for that heat. I'm excited to be here, man. I just had my home league auction this past weekend. Really exciting times. And thank you, before we get started, to all of the listeners who have recently left a review on iTunes. We're up over 500 there, Jacob. We will be answering a couple questions at the end of today's show. And then we're going to do a whole show this week dedicated to your questions so we can motivate more people to go do it. Go to iTunes right now, leave a rating, leave a review. And I will say this, Jacob, there was one question in there. And it was weird because the guy said, awesome, love the show, really complimentary, left his question, wants his question answered, but he left a 3-star review. So, of course, I'm not answering that. I'm a cutthroat reviewer. I'm a cutthroat host here. If you don't leave 5 stars, you're not getting your question answered. So that's just how it is. But people are here for the RB rankings today, Jacob. Let's give the people what they want.
3 stars is crazy, man. I
can see but he loved the show.
You just don't like us, you want to give us 1, but 3, you're going to call Beyond the Box Score mid? That's crazy.
But it was weird because he said, amazing show, all compliments, but I think he just clicked the wrong button, But
Cool.
It is what it is. Unfortunately for that listener, he won't get his question answered. All right.
Get it right.
Yeah, get it right. All right. Let's do this thing, Jacob. Let's dive right into it. Let's start with RB rankings. We're going to probably break it down the way I expect to, with these top guys that we really think could ultimately define your fantasy season. So let's get right into it.
All right. Yeah. Shout out producer Josh, put together some cool graphics for us. We've got our composite rankings combined. Me and Dan looked at some of the biggest differences between the two and then made our top 12, top 24. We're going to start at the top with Bijan Robinson. We've got a 2-way tie here, Bijan and Saquon Barkley. I have Bijan at 1. Dan has him at 3 behind Saquon and Christian McCaffrey. I have Saquon at 2. Could go either way. For me, I do lean towards the younger player. I've got a bunch to say about him, but basically, I think you have a floor of 15 to 2,000 yards from scrimmage with him. And you also have the lowest injury risk of the top backs in terms of just size and age. He seems like he's the most built for it of all of the guys at the top. And so I feel super secure taking him there. And I do think that there's a ceiling there as well. I think there's been a lack of explosive plays, basically, is the only knock on Bijan Robinson. And I think that's why some people are leaning more towards Saquon or Jahmyr Gibbs. They got, the game-breaking ability that we haven't seen yet with Bijan Robinson. But to me, I think that kind of speaks towards the fact that there could be even more upside for him. So I've got some stats on that. But first, I wanted to ask you, why do you have him behind Saquon and CMC?
Yeah, so I had CMC 1, Saquon 2, Bijan 3. For me, an interesting thing that I just worry about with Bijan is what the heck is going on at right tackle over there in Atlanta? Because first of all, they lose their swing tackle for a large chunk of the season. Then we hear Caleb McGarry's out, and it doesn't sound good from everything I'm reading on this McGarry injury at right tackle. It sounds like it's going to be a long time. I don't know what their solution's going to be there. Maybe they're the team that trades for Cam Robinson. I heard he was on the market there in Houston. They haven't liked what they've seen, or they like their second-round pick, Ursary. Maybe that's some kind of solution. But anytime you're kind of trading for the end of the roster cuts player, I don't think it typically works out that well. The offensive line scares me a little bit. And I looked at last season, Jacob, and I think with Michael Penix in, there are good things for Bijan. He'll be in a more up-tempo scheme, but I also think they're going to take a lot more shots vertically in the passing game and be just a more pass-heavy team in general. So that's something that concerns me a little bit less. It's mostly the line. And I looked at last year. I mean, Barkley was much better on the ground, 500 more rushing yards. And for me, there were just so many plays, and you could see it in the stats, where Barkley went down at the 2 or the 1. And yet he still only had 1 fewer rushing touchdown on Bijan with all the touchdowns Hurts stole. If that just upticks a little bit and he gets a little bit more aggression there, positive regression there, Barkley, he's going to beat him out from that standpoint, touchdowns. And then when it comes to CMC, he's my 1. I mean, CMC, if he's healthy, is going, in my opinion, going to be the number 1 scorer in fantasy football. And that's borne out by all past years that CMC has played. His equation, we've gone over this, is so easy to me. It's just stay healthy. And then he's going to get 1 million targets, million, not a million, but tons of targets, tons of receptions, and more importantly, tons of touchdowns.
Yeah, totally fair. I'm high on both of them. Like, I've got no problem with anybody taking them.
Yeah.
I just do want to make the case for why I think it's like such an easy click on Bijan Robinson, because he is entering the prime of his career. And I do have a lot of confidence in the offense and the offensive coordinator to kind of scheme around whatever may happen with the offensive line. But
Sure.
that's a totally valid concern to bring up. So if I can share my screen here just real quick on Bijan. Highest PFF rushing grade for a year two running back since 2010. That's a really good list of players here. It's got Nick Chubb on it. It's got Jonathan Taylor year two. Those guys were nuts. Jahmyr Gibbs last year was close. Bijan is the highest of that group. And then I've talked about this before, but I do think it's just so impressive in terms of creating first downs. This is, any running back, any age. Only two running backs actually have created more total first downs from scrimmage than Robinson did last year. He tied Christian McCaffrey's best season ever in that stat. And then if you look at the yardage totals, and this is part of just like how he just compiles all these numbers with the high success rates and everything. He had 1887 in terms of scrimmage yards last year, became the first running back since 2005 to have over 1,800 scrimmage yards without a single rush or reception of 40 or more yards. And he was the most efficient of that group. The Falcons were number one in rushing success rate last year with a good offensive line, but not a great one. And I think so much of that does just speak to the talent that Robinson brings. If you look at like the percentage of runs that gained 5 or more yards, 44% of his runs gained 5 or more yards. That was by far the highest in the league. So to me, it's like, what if we do get some of these explosive runs? And you brought up the touchdowns. What if the Falcons are more effective, efficient at scoring points than they were last year? Last year, the Falcons were first in rushing success rate, 7th in overall offensive success rate, 6th in offensive yards per game, but they were only 17th in offensive points per game. They're 20th in red zone efficiency, 22nd in goal to go efficiency. I think if that improves, whether that's through big plays or better efficiency in the red zone, then all of a sudden we've got this ridiculous yardage floor and touchdowns. And I think that's how he gets to the ceiling. And I just want to bring that up because I think people just look at Bijan as like just safe, and it's like he could have a ridiculous fantasy season. Absolutely. Yeah. So he's an easy click for me at the top.
I like this, and I love that I think it's fun to debate these top players. We didn't get to talk about them a lot through the last 2 months. And I admit it, out of all my rankings, Jacob, this is where I'm least with consensus across the board. I mean, nobody I know has McCaffrey and Barkley 1-2. And it's partially the things we discussed, and I do like the upside case, but I look at a few things, not just the offensive line. I guess they're just holding me back. One, Bijan Robinson, there's nothing in his profile or his tape at Texas or his production at Texas that says he shouldn't have had a 40-plus yard run play so far in his career. So some of that I feel like is team context-based, and I ultimately, it just makes me think, like, is it going to change there in Atlanta with the current group on offensive line that's already banged up? Secondly, I actually think Kirk Cousins is very good for him, specifically in PPR leagues. I think Cousins gets through his progression and gets to the running back. From all the Penix I watched at Washington, he doesn't throw to his backs a lot, and he likes to target downfield. He likes to attack the intermediate vertical areas, and he's going to rip those shots. He trusts his arm and his velocity that he can put behind to, stick these tight window throws. So do I wonder if the receptions come down a little bit in the targets? I do with Bijan, I should say. So these are just little concerns I have. It's, I'm perfectly fine taking Bijan. I don't feel like I have CMC and Barkley so high that I would never take Bijan. We did a super flex real league draft today on FFT. I took Bijan before any running back. I took him first, mostly because I don't have a lot of exposure to him, because in auctions, I just don't bid on him because he goes for so much more than the other two. And I find that to be a value loss for me. So I'm good with it, and I get it. And everybody has it there.
Yeah. One more thing. He was RB1 in XFP, expected fantasy points per game last year. That's per the Fantasy Points data suite. I'm going to reference that throughout the podcast. It's a formula that they have that like quantifies where each touch is coming. So it's not every target is the same. RB1 overall, the only running back with a higher XFP per game number was Alvin Kamara, who we're going to get to later. I think that's a really relevant stat for both him and Kenneth Walker, who I think you're too low on both of them, but we'll get to that in a second. Yeah. All right. If I can share my screen here, I've got just an interesting illustration here that I'm just going to kind of have rolling in the background while we talk about these next few guys. So Saquon was RB7 in XFP per game last year. Good, but he really did get there through massive efficiency, which could happen again. Offensive environment is awesome. He's awesome, of course. What I have here is an illustration of the death of the bell cow running back. So this is dating back to 2000, this data. It's the leaders in percentage of offensive first downs. And I do think first downs are really, really important. I'm actually shifting my leagues to be, first point per first down rather than point per reception, which makes somebody like Derrick Henry.
If we could get that going long term in fantasy, I think it'd be a very good thing. I don't know if it has sticking value, but I would agree with you on that.
I think, yeah, it's more representative of like real life value. Like Derrick Henry is like truly an RB1 overall candidate within that lens. So here it is at the top. You've got like Priest, Holmes, and you just notice the dates as this rolls. Anybody who played in the 2020s, you'll see it highlighted. But we're already through 15, 20 running backs here, and not a single
Davis.
One.
What a
not
throwback.
A single one. Yeah, some cool names here. Saquon Barkley was pretty high on this list. He's here. Jonathan Taylor's second season. This is the first running back we're seeing in the 2020s. He's 18th overall on this list. You'll see Bijan before too long. Not very many running backs recently, though.
Yeah.
And I just do think like it's really relevant, like how much of an offensive engine Bijan is, because it's becoming more and more and more rare in the NFL with running backs as work just continues to get split.
So let me put it to you this way then, Jacob. If you're in, and I know you don't do a lot of them, but if you're in an auction draft, are you paying the premium price to get Bijan, who goes a good $5, $6, sometimes $8 to $10 more than Barkley and McCaffrey?
I'm comfortable doing it. That's not often this strategy because I do think that there are some really good running back values. But we're going to get to auction values later at the end of this for the auction people that have been clamoring for that. And I know Dan's a huge auction guy, so that'll be fun. I haven't done any auction drafts this year other than dynasty drafts. In a dynasty draft, I might. Yeah, I do think he's worth it. I think he's that kind of a player. There he is right here, 76th, 28%. It's just like, it's so much different than it used to be. But that's the highest rate of anybody last year.
Wow.
Derrick Henry was a close second. I think he's coming up soon. Okay, so top three, pretty interchangeable. That brings us to Jahmyr Gibbs, who we're a little low on. Our buddy Ben Gretsch has him at RB1 overall.
Yep.
I think it's fair to put him in that range. I think he could absolutely have a bigger season than any of these guys. I've got some stats on Gibbs for sure, but first, is there any reason you're lower? Is it just concern about the offensive environment and the offensive line?
No, so this is a thing I want to make clear on these rankings. We're doing composite rankings. You'll see these rankings listed like 1 through 10, whatnot. But the way I do my rankings, and I think it's a very important distinction, is by tiers. And so I think that really gives a better idea. So Gibbs is one of 4 players in my tier 1: McCaffrey, Barkley, Bijan, and Gibbs. So I think that is important to note. So even though he's 4 overall for me, he's in that range. And in a lot of ways, they are interchangeable. I think he's just my 4th because I think, he still has Montgomery there to battle with touchdowns and touches. And B, the loss of Ragnow, changing out 2 guards. It's a lot going on the interior offensive line. Not to mention Ben Johnson's gone. Like that is just, how I feel that I feel like we're going to be too low on this Lions offense ultimately, Jacob, and they're probably just going to once again be one of the best fantasy producers in the NFL. But I don't want to be a year too late there.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. To that note, the Lions, this is in contrast to everything I brought up with the Falcons offense and Bijan. The Lions were 1st in goal to go efficiency, 3rd in red zone efficiency last year. I think that there were a lot of things that inflated the numbers for Gibbs, and people look at, at the end of the season where he's just averaging 30 points per game without David Montgomery and just be like, he could break fantasy, and he could, but there were a lot of things going into that, not just his talent, which is obviously awesome. But if you look at, what we've got this year, we do have some concerns about some of this team level stuff regressing, and David Montgomery is there. Maybe it changes from what we saw last year, but what we saw last year was RB14 in XFP per game for Gibbs. In the David Montgomery games, he averaged 14.2 XFP. That would have ranked RB17 behind James Conner. David Montgomery's number was 13.9. So I think that does shift a little bit. That makes sense to me that it would, but we don't know for sure. And we do know that David Montgomery is there and is a good player. Dating back to 2000, there have been 20 running backs to score 20 or more touchdowns in a season. Gibbs got 20 last year. Among that group, his 2024 ranked 15th in scrimmage yards per game and 18th in touches per game. It was an outlier season. He's fully capable of being an outlier at any time. But I'm more comfortable taking Bijan over Gibbs, and I'm fine with Saquon. I think he's a similar level of talent, and I'm a little bit less nervous about the team level stuff for Saquon than I am with Gibbs. They're basically identical, those two. Those are my RB1, RB2, RB3. CMC is next, and then Derrick Henry is after that. So you've gotten tier 2.
Let's talk a little bit, though. I just want to add a little bit on Gibbs. I really think you illustrated the point really well as to why he's 4 for us and not in that mix for 1. It's if you look at all of the actual the volume and the production, it's more of in that RB2 range or back end RB1. The touchdowns boosted him up. The offensive environment boosted him up, right, Jacob? Like the Detroit Lions are one of the most injured defenses in the entire NFL last season. So that is going to lead to more shootouts, and that's going to lead to more scoring opportunities for Gibbs, in addition to just Montgomery not being on the field. So it's just something that concerns me.
Gibbs is definitely not a bad pick. I don't want to berate the point here, but there are reasons that I have Bijan higher. That's all I really wanted to hit on here. So your tier 2 after your CMC, Saquon, Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs tier is just Derrick Henry and Ashton Jeanty.
Yes.
I wanted to bring up that Henry, like Gibbs, like Saquon to some extent, is getting there through ridiculous efficiency. If you look at XFP, he was RB15 on the year, RB19 per game. I'm fine betting on that again, but there is a chance that he does. If his efficiency decreases by 5 to 10%, that would have a meaningful change. And then there's also the age factor and all the carries. So I actually don't get Henry a lot, but I think he's a totally valid pick if you want to just have an easy click at the end of round 1. But there are so many good players, in that round 1-2 range. So that's why I don't end up with him a ton. I have him at RB7. You have him at RB5. So I have both Jeanty and Devon Achane ahead of him. These are full PPR rankings. I totally get if the Achane one makes people super uncomfortable. Dan has him at RB12 to help us balance things out here. Let's talk about Jeanty. So Jeanty he played 2 preseason games with Geno Smith, 19 snaps for Geno in those games. Jeanty was on the field for all but 1. I projected the other day where I think the rookie running backs, receivers, tight ends, what their snap rates might be in week 1. I legitimately think he could play like 90% of the snaps.
Wow.
And that's pretty unheard of for any running back, let alone a rookie. And I think that there's PPR upside there as well, and I'm bullish on the offense. But a lot of this is projecting. The offense is not expected to be very good, and that type of a role would be really rare. But I think he warrants it. He's that type of a player. Am I just like way too high on Jeanty here? I'm RB6.
No, I mean that I'm right almost there with you. I just have Henry above him. Henry's a guy I was highest on our team last year. I was happy about that hit. And it's like the same thing with Barkley. They're returning to the same environment. The only thing to me, these are simple plans, CMC, Barkley, and Henry. It's just stay healthy. The rest of these have some question marks, in my opinion, attached to them, which I think should be baked more into our analysis and rankings. To me, that's why I have them ranked high, because I like the no question players. But as far as Jeanty goes, the question for me would be, are all the things you broke down, Jacob, going to play out? Is he going to get the volume we expect? Are they going to be in the game scripts we're hoping for Jeanty? I think that's important. Now, that may not be important if Jeanty is their passing down back, is there no huddle back, which he could be. It's just hard for me to know that right now. I also still have questions about their offensive line and their blocking unit, which was not good last season and has really taken a step back since Carm Brasil left them their former offensive line coach, I should say. So just a little bit of concern there on that front. But ultimately, like the upside is through the roof for sure with Jeanty. We know what he is as a prospect, so there's no denying that. So I'm okay. I'm okay having above Henry. It makes sense to me. It depends how you want to draft your team.
Yeah, for sure. It's more upside for me here, but they're both great picks. You ready to go to break?
Yeah, let's take our first break, and then we'll take a quick break, I should say, to hear a word from our sponsor. We're going to get back into the next tier of backs.
Here we go. The 2025 CBS Sports NFL schedule is here. 18 glorious Sundays.
He's got his receiver touchdown.
Filled with rematches.
Oh, the play of the year.
And rivalries.
Touchdown, Bengals.
Plus, plenty of superstar showdowns. And an epic matchup between the Chiefs and Cowboys on Thanksgiving. Clear your Sundays beginning September 7th for the NFL on CBS and Paramount Plus.
Oh man, Jacob, that That little commercial we just did got me so excited, man. We have football so close to being back. Last night, I realized it was the last Monday without Monday Night Football for so long. It's real. It's here. It's happening. They're real and they're spectacular. Let's get back into the running back tiers here.
We're so close. All right, so I'm going to take us on a quick deviation here from the straight rundown, 1 through 12, where basically we just went through all of the round 1 backs. There are some other guys who could push up into that range. I know Josh Jacobs and a lot of CBS drafts goes towards the end of round 1. As a quick aside, I want to just give us the biggest discrepancies, the biggest variations here between our two ranking sets. So these are Dan's guys, or in some cases, I think maybe just guys that Dan hates less than me. I don't want to make you like sign up for Brian Robinson propaganda here. But these are the players where there was the biggest difference leaning towards Dan. It's CMC and then Josh Jacobs. He's significantly higher than me on. You have him running back 7. I'm at 10. Okay. James Cook, James Conner, Tony Pollard. Some really significant differences there. You have Cook at RB10. I'm at RB17.
Yep.
You have James Conner at RB15 ahead of some guys that I love like RJ Harvey and Travion Henderson. That's a spicy one for, all the people who are on Twitter and all the sickos and everything. It's going to be tough to stomach an old vet over these young guys. So Conner, Tony Pollard, DeAndre Swift, you're much higher on. Tyrone Tracy, Caleb Johnson. I think I'm just really, really low on Caleb.
You're very low on Caleb, yeah.
J.K. Dobbins, Austin Eckler, Jadon Blue, Jerome Ford, Tyjae Spears, Brian Robinson, Rashad White, Roshan Johnson, Najee Harris, Enrico Dowdle. So a lot of those towards the end, I'm just low on. Is there anyone there that you legitimately think like you're high on for a reason and you want to convince me of? Is it Jadon Blue? Is anybody there?
My biggest one would be James Cook, and I've been way higher than him against consensus for this entire preseason. Understand, look, people are just going to look at the one stat, 40% of his total points came from TDs. Okay, that's a regression candidate. But at the same time, when you watch the James Cook tape, it's eerily reminiscent of Dalvin Cook. There's only 2 runners I've ever seen run like them on tape. It's that elite vision and that elite speed behind the vision. They are essentially behind a line of scrimmage, and at any point, I feel like they can cut in any direction and break free. And it's why James Cook is so valuable, because he breaks long runs. We forget in fantasy, big plays, big play touchdowns are important. Yeah, he had 18 touchdowns. Some of that will regress, I'm sure, though he's had a much bigger role in the red zone since the changeover from why am I blanking? It's from Ken Dorsey to where we're at now with Joe Brady. But while some of those touchdowns may come down, he's still running behind the 7th best offensive line on yards before contact per attempt last year. The Bills' offensive line, who returns all starters, have great rapport coming back. He had the 5th best forced missed tackle rate, tied with Bijan Robinson last year. 3rd best yards per carry on man gap runs, which they really found a way, and that's fantasy points data, by the way. Shout them out. And they really found a way to utilize him, in my opinion, the best to his ability in man gap. 5.25 yards per carry, a 4.9 yards per carry career average. He's a really good back. That's kind of the thing that I feel is lost with James Cook, because he doesn't get 100% of the snaps. And there's, talk of Ray Davis, who's also a very talented player. Mm-hmm. We're talking about one of, in my opinion, the 5-6 most talented running backs in the NFL, playing in a great offense that's going to score a lot of touchdowns, and behind a top 7 offensive line in yards created. All of that combined leads me to believe he should never be ranked outside of the top 10.
I love it. I do think he's a very good player. I think basically you just outlined what people want Travion Henderson to be.
Yes.
And what he might be. And he's on the highest scoring offense in the NFL.
Yeah, exactly. And he and I feel like Travion Henderson is being drafted around the same range as James Cook.
There's a lot more hypothetical receiving upside. We could get a Josh McDaniels fueled 80 target season for Travion, which we're probably not getting for Cook.
The other thing with Cook, I still feel like his early career usage is used against him, which I don't think is fair. So before I brought up the coordinator stuff, with Ken Dorsey, before Joe Brady got there, Josh Allen had 44 red zone carries to 29 for Cook. Since then, 83 for Cook, 62 for Allen. And he's not always in the red zone. He's not the back they only use, but he's had 16.6 touches per game since Joe Brady got there. And they just re-signed him to a contract. Like, this is not somebody they're going to mix in other backs for. This is somebody who they believe gives them the best chance to win when he's on the field. And I believe that too. Fantasy points per snap last year, by the way, I think this is also a fantasy points data stat that I found when doing some research on Cook. He was 3rd most behind Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery last season.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, so much of that does have to do with touchdowns. If you look at XFP,
Yeah.
he was running back 26 in XFP per game.
Gotcha.
Only 57% of the Bills' running back runs went to Cook, which was RB20. So that's behind Ramondre Stevenson, behind Tyrone Tracy, who wasn't even the starter at the beginning of the year. But
And don't get me wrong, Jacob. I'm sorry I cut you off. I respect that stat to an extent, but I don't think it takes into account everything because he's the player. He's the type of player who can house it on one of these touch. Like, is that taking into account his ability to take any touch to the house? Where I don't necessarily know if Tracy and some of those other backs who are with him have that kind of breakaway ability.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. It's like betting on Jahmyr Gibbs, but without the receiving.
Yes,
it's a bet that makes me a little nervous. I'm okay with it. I think I'm just barely below consensus. I wouldn't want to be high on it. I would rather take a bet on some of these other young running backs who have receiving upside, because if it all comes together, I just think it's bigger than Cook. You like have to get the 18 touchdowns or whatever from Cook for him to match those players.
But
Sorry,
go ahead.
To that point, what I was going to say earlier is a stat to back up what you brought up, which is that he was way more involved in the red zone than I think people realize, even with the touchdowns. I still think there's this idea of what happened in his rookie season, and people like Ray Davis and there's Josh Allen and everything. Just in terms of running back runs, he had 73% of the running back runs inside of the 10, which was RB13. That was ahead of Bijan Robinson. So that's high for any running back, let alone somebody at his size. So the touchdowns could be there. Absolutely could be there.
And like for me, it's like if he was being drafted in this range of where I have him in the tier 3, I probably wouldn't like him as much, but I know where I can get him in drafts. And he gets drafted in the range of the Trevion Hendersons, the RJ Harveys, maybe a little bit, and definitely a little bit after Ken Walker. Like you can get him after Hampton, after Kyron, so you can get him much later. Is why it's one of the reasons I like him so much.
Yeah, and I'll hear you out in relation to those rookie running backs, but I absolutely will not hear you out when it comes to ranking James Cook ahead of Bucky Irving.
So I feel like when you said like you hated my Bucky Irving ranking, I was like, really? It's not a low ranking. Like I have him RB 11 overall. That's not terrible.
RB 11 outside of your top 24, I would have to presume behind Chase Brown, behind James Cook, which maybe you're just really bullish on those guys. And you think like you're at consensus with Bucky? Is that where you're at?
I feel like I'm maybe a tad below consensus with Bucky, but yeah, I definitely have Chase above him.
Okay. Do you want to give anything on Bucky? Is it just concerns about Wirfs, offensive coordinator change?
No, it's not really a concern when it comes to Bucky. I just really like those two players. Chase Brown it looks to me like he's going to be in an all-down role essentially for Cincy on a high-powered offense with a ton of red zone opportunities and reception upside. With Bucky, I'm just a little bit concerned what the role will be, and the Wirfs injury definitely freaks me out a little bit. And just generally speaking, will there be a regression without Liam Cohen? I'm a really big believer in Liam Cohen. You'll see it sprayed throughout my rankings for the next couple of days when we go over them. I'm insanely high on Lawrence, insanely high on Hunter, BTJ, really across the board there. So maybe that's a little bit of that concern seeping in.
Yeah, let me give you guys my guys. I gave you Dan's earlier. I'm going to give you mine. We'll go to break, and then we'll come back and talk about Bucky. So these are the players I'm significantly higher on than Dan. It's Devon Achane, it's Bucky, it's Kenneth Walker, RJ Harvey, Trevion Henderson. I really like the start to my list. Then it gets kind of gross. And so I'm excited to talk about some of these guys. Breece Hall, Aaron Jones.
You're higher on those? You're higher on these guys?
That's what the rankings say. I didn't mean to be, but here we are.
Oh, versus me.
Yes. Travis Etienne and Trevor Etienne, Jordan Mason, Bashal Tutin, of course. It's impossible to be higher on him than I am. Bill, Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt.
Yeah.
Joe Mixon? What? Ramondre Stevenson.
I've really dropped him low in the rankings, Mixon.
Yes, you have. Ramondre Stevenson, Dylan Sampson, Jarquez Hunter, Woody Marks, and Taj Brooks. That's the list. Let's take a break, and then we'll get back to Bucky Irving. Okay, Bucky Irving. Just an insane stat here. The number of games with 150 or more scrimmage yards during a rookie season: Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Breece Hall, Travis Etienne, Kenneth Walker, Tyrone Tracy, all with 150 yards as a rookie is a ton. Alvin Kamara, Jonathan Taylor, Devon Achane with 2, Bucky Irving and Saquon Barkley with 3. Bucky Irving was only in a relevant role for like half of the season.
Right.
And he's like one of the most explosive yardage creators in terms of both yards per route run and on the ground that we've really ever seen from a rookie season. And I'm sure that Liam Cohen had something to do with that. If you look at, runs with pre-snap motion, Bucky Irving averaged a full yard more than runs without pre-snap motion. There are definitely things, we've covered this at length in different Beyond the Box Score podcasts. There are ways that Liam Cohen helped him for sure. But at the same time, this guy's really freaking good. He averaged over 4 yards after contact per rush. There's only like a handful of running backs in the time that we have that data available to ever do that. He averaged 3.4 yards per rush when hit at or behind the line of scrimmage last year. The NFL average was 1.7. So he was double the average on running back runs when hit at or behind the line of scrimmage. Your boy Tank Bigsby, number 2, tied with Derrick Henry at 2.3. James Cook ranks high on this as well, 2.1. Chuba Hubbard, who we're going to talk about. There's a lot of Chuba Hubbard stats on today's podcast, and I just think it's interesting to point it out because we are both pretty low on him. 2.2 yards per rush when hit at.
I don't feel like I'm low on Hubbard, but I guess in the rankings I technically am. I like Hubbard.
Yeah, I think that's where we both are. Is like he's a great player, but for fantasy, we're worried about the receiving. We're not all that excited about taking him. Hayden Winks has brought up some interesting points where it's like he's basically being drafted behind where he was last year.
Yeah,
I don't really think that's valid, because the offense is expected to get better.
Right.
But yeah, for me, it's an upside concern where I think this is where we both are. Is like we like the players that we're ranking ahead of him because we think that they have the upside to be something a lot better than Hubbard.
Sure.
If we were just like, you have to choose one, who's going to score more points, we'd probably choose Hubbard over a lot of these guys that we have ranked ahead of him. But we are trying to find league winners with every pick. So back to Bucky. The guy's just so good. There's a million ways to quantify it. And then you turn on the film and you see it all the time. I mean, just this preseason, they've got him lined out wide, getting go balls in the back corner of the end zone for a touchdown. He's just so good, so fun. But the role wasn't really there. And that, I would guess, is part of the reason why you're concerned or why anyone might be concerned about drafting Bucky. He was RB19 in XFP last year. But in healthy games from week 11 on, that was their bye, was week 11, he had an average of 18 XFP per game, which is exactly what Bijan Robinson averaged last year. And that was Rachaad White playing in all of those games. And Bucky was a little bit banged up, but they were, feeding him. So maybe it's a slightly different offense, a different role this year. We don't really know. They talk about all 3 backs and liking all 3 backs. We've at least seen Bucky in a role where he doesn't have to get there through peak efficiency. That's encouraging to me, with the playoff hopes on the line last year, 70% snap rate, handled 21 of 23 running back touches, scored the game-sealing touchdown. He was the guy at the end of the year. Playoff game, 17 of 18 running back rush attempts went to Bucky Irving. So I think it's possible that last year's role isn't what's going to carry forward. And if you look at players who have had 1,500 or more scrimmage yards with a snap rate below 50%, it's literally just him and Alvin Kamara, man. He's so good. And I don't want to shy away from it just because there are some things that make us uncomfortable. I just want to take a player who's this good because what if it continues to grow? Almost any player we've seen be this efficient, their role grows in year 2. That's exactly what happened with Devon Achane, So that's where I'm at with Bucky. I cannot justify James Cook over him. No way.
Super strong take. And I know I'm very, very high on James Cook. It'll be fun to see that play out over the season because in my opinion are very similar picks, right? They're not probably going to get the full touches. They're both in offenses that could be elite. I kind of feel more confident in the Bills offense. And I just believe Cook has a little bit more big play potential to me than Bucky, but that's not necessarily we're splitting hairs here. I have them ranked back to back. I do have them both ranked over Devon Achane, who you still have ranked much higher. I want to talk a little bit about that because while I do have Achane and Bucky rounding out my tier 3 of running backs at 11 and 12 overall, and then I see a drop off, I don't necessarily know that I when push comes to shove and I'm going to draft Jacob, I don't know that I actually do have Achane ranked that high because I don't necessarily see myself drafting Achane. And it's no knock on Achane. I loved Achane until the injury, but I kind of do love what Scott Pianowski brings up, which is don't chase injuries. Injuries will find you in your fantasy season. Why am I drafting a guy with a calf strain with a profile that's had a lot of injuries in the past behind a bad offensive line on a weird offense where Tyreek Hill is now injured with an oblique we don't know about? Is he even going to care about this season? So many issues for me on that offense team context wise. Still a great player, but an injured player in a bad team context. I just can't get myself to do it right now on HN. I don't know if I should move him down my ranks, honestly.
Yeah. Why you would do it is because he was RB2 in XFP last year.
Oh, yeah.
And that's just the volume. Like we've seen him be the type of talent that could transcend volume even in terms of efficiency. And he actually has the volume. In games that Tua played, his average XFP went from 17 up to 20, which was higher than anybody last year. During the time Fantasy Points data has XFP available, which is 4 or 5 years, CMC is the only one who's ever averaged more than 20.
Wow.
That's what HN averaged with Tua last year. And then that's all about receiving. 177 PPR points over his past 17 games with Tua, just as a receiver, which would have ranked him between Khalil Shakir and Cooper Kupp last year in terms of their total points. That's what HN has over his past 17 games.
Just as a receiver.
Just as a receiver. He also runs the ball and was really, really, really good at it his rookie season. Maybe things are better. Maybe the offensive line is better. Maybe all of our concerns are just a little overblown, and you get literally the best player in fantasy in round 2
at a discount, right?
Or round 3. That's why you would still consider him. Right. But it feels just like CMC did it this time last year.
That's the problem.
But
I have read that they announced that people are saying in the chat, like, Miami's saying HN should be ready for week 1, no setbacks.
Right.
And maybe the case. And then it's an absolute steal because all the points Jacob alluded to are why I had HN ranked as a clear first round. Like HN, somebody who was high in my rankings and then moved down because I don't know how to project injuries that are already happening. I'm better at projecting, in my mind at least. I don't worry as much about Christian McCaffrey injury prone, right? Like that to me, he's healthy right now. We're projecting an injury, but HN is already hurt. It's hard to really gather how hurt he is. Maybe he's fine. But I don't know, man. It's just not something I'm willing to make the gamble on with the opportunity cost at play there.
Yep. That's where I'm at with him when it comes to opportunity cost. I've moved him behind BTJ, Nico Collins, Malik Neighbors, all of these, even Brock Bowers for full PPR.
Yep.
All these players that I just feel so good about, I've moved him behind them. But I do have him ahead of Bucky Irving and some of these back end of round 2 guys that I still feel good about, because I think HN does have that just true game-breaking number 1 player in fantasy upside that somebody like BTJ also has, So that's where I'm at.
It speaks to a lot of how we play fantasy, Jacob.
I had him at like 5th or 6th overall. And
I had him up there too, man.
And now he's like a 2nd round pick for me. So I have adjusted, but this type of upside, I have a really tough time passing up on.
Which I get. I just wanted to say, it speaks a lot to how we play fantasy. You and I are aligned very much so on this one specific thing, almost in lockstep. We both play to win fantasy. Like, we take risks. We are going for upside. We're trying to find as many league winners as possible. We don't draft a lot of the league medium players. And it's just how we evaluate the game, which is why sometimes it flames out for us. And I know I can't speak for you, but I can speak for myself. There are times last season I was very high on McCaffrey in auction leagues, spent the money, and that's a total flame out, right? Like, it could derail your whole season. So when you're going for league winners, there is a risk at play.
Yeah. One last thing on HM, we do need to move on. I think his equation is basically what Christian McCaffrey's is. I guess maybe there's more team level concern, but it's basically, if he's healthy, he's gonna smash, So I just want to bring that up because it's like, if you're comfortable drafting CMC, like, I don't really feel comfortable with drafting CMC. I don't really trust anything that's coming out of San Francisco at this point in regards to CMC. I have no idea where he's going to be at this point in his career. I think they're basically the same.
I would disagree with that because I like the 49ers team context a lot more, but it's understandable.
Yeah. We've done
a lot on this.
All right. Josh Jacobs, running back 7 in XFP last year, running back 12 in XFP per game. Is there any reason to expect it to change? Marshawn Lloyd can't stay on the field. I think this is just where he's at. And like, nobody cares. Nobody except for CBS drafters cares. He's like a back end of round 2 pick in almost every single site except for CBS. Nobody ever talks about him. Dan, guess who had the most avoided tackles on receptions last year? Just
Josh
total
Jacobs?
Avoided tackles on receptions. Josh Jacobs. What are we talking about? On a team that didn't even throw the ball. Like, somehow that's a real stat. He's a very good player. He really is. Like, people just sleep on this guy, I guess, because he's kind of boring. And he had 1 year where he was really hyped up for fantasy. It was a bit disappointing. But like, man, he's a beast. He can handle the workload. He's everything you want in a fantasy running back. Easy pick for me if he's on the board, and I don't love the other options there. With that said,
I obviously have him. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I'm lower than him on you. You have him at RB7. So Dan has him ahead of Chase Brown. Dan has him well ahead of Achane, ahead of Bucky, ahead of Jonathan Taylor. The only player from that group that I just gave that I have him ranked higher than is JT. And it's mostly just an upside concern with the receiving touches there. But he can make up for it with touchdowns. If the Packers offense is like as good as we think that it could be, we're pretty high in a lot of these Packers pieces, then Jacobs could easily like have 15, 16 touchdowns, something like that, and be a really, really, really good high upside option too.
And just to be clear, I have him in a tier with all those guys you mentioned. And I do really believe they can be interchangeable. Like if I have one guy, Jacobs ranked 7th, but Taylor ranked 9th, I don't see much of a separation there, but it is 7 versus 9 technically. And the reason why he gets the slight nod and the tiebreaker, I guess you could call it, would be that I ultimately believe, Jacob, there's so much upside for him from a team context standpoint. He did what he did last year, fantasy production wise, despite having one of what I deem to be probably the worst Jordan Love offense we'll see throughout his tenure, as long as he doesn't have another one of those injured seasons. Love after the injury was just not the same player. And what that led to was tighter boxes, defenses rotating safeties out more often, a lot less opportunity in the run game. If Love can get back to the level he played at previously in his career, especially with Matthew Golden now in the mix, who we're both insanely high on, that could open up a lot of opportunity for Jacobs, not just more scoring opportunities, but actually opportunities for big runs. Like that's the main reason I think he falls so far in our fantasy drafts. It's that he doesn't have a lot of explosive plays. Well, if defenses are playing more 2 high and more cover 6, cover 3, he's going to have opportunities for more big plays. So that's one of the reasons I'm high on him.
Yeah, I think those are really good points. I think he's one of the most overlooked players this draft season. So if I can share my screen here, I've got Dan's tiers pulled up, and I just want to run through them real quick. His top 4, we talked about CMC, Saquon, Bijan, Jahmyr Gibbs. And then in a tier all to themselves, we've got Derrick Henry, Nash, and Genty. And then here's the tier that we just hit on, Josh Jacobs at the top of tier 3, with Chase Brown, Jonathan Taylor, James Cook, Bucky Irving, and Achane at the bottom of that tier. I think that's fair. I just can't put him ahead of somebody like Chase Brown for full PPR. We've talked about Brown a lot. Just real quick on Chase Brown, I mentioned that CMC is the only running back to average more than 20 XFP, expected fantasy points. That's fantasy points data dating back to 2021. Chase Brown was at 22.4 from week 9 on. So when he became the starter, it was like blowing anything we've seen out of the water. And it's not a small sample size like Jahmyr Gibbs at the end of the season. It's like half of the season he was at 22.4. I don't know if he's going to retain the role that he had last year, but what we've seen this preseason like absolutely indicates that he is. Nothing has changed. Right. He's getting like a touch on half of the offensive plays with Joe Burrow in the game, and he's on the field for basically all of them, pass protecting anything other than like clear long down and distance situations. He's been on the field. So I've been pushing him up and up and up. You've got him high in your rankings, and I think I'm even higher for full PPR. He's an easy pick in round 2. I still do lean towards Bucky because I think he's just a really special talent. But I wouldn't blame anyone for taking Brown in full PPR.
I'm with that.
I think we've hit on basically everybody here at the top. So let's have an interesting debate here. Kenneth Walker, Tony Pollard, and who was the other one?
Harvey.
Or
James Conner, I know I have up there.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go. Yes, you do. Let's go Kenneth Walker and James Conner and Tony Pollard.
Sure.
And the rookies. You have Conner ranked the highest out of that group, and then Kenneth Walker, and there's a tier break. Conner's in a tier above these guys. And then Kenneth Walker, Tony Pollard next, RJ Harvey next, Travion Henderson. So they're all very close. And Conner is clearly like in a different tier than the rest, and that surprised me a little bit. What's the distinction for you there? Just safety?
I am so much higher on Conner than all of consensus. I've learned that, not just consensus, but auction drafts I've done. He's really cheap. For me with Conner, it's a combination of things. One, he's been massively productive throughout his tenure with the Cardinals, specifically lately as they made the switch to Drew Petzing. 2, I honestly believe from watching their tape, and you can kind of speak to this, that offense runs through James Conner. It doesn't run through Kyler. It doesn't run through Harrison. McBride gets a lot of targets, but most of that is off play action boot and just design stuff via the run game, getting these opportunities by running the offense through this one player. Now, I like Trey Benson. They drafted him high, but Conner hasn't shown any decline in production or ability in my mind. In addition to that, I like the way that Petzik designs that run game. We've spoken to that in the past. Really good stuff on tape from a blocking standpoint. Uses very interesting blocking schemes that create extra yardage before contact for Connor, which he can sometimes benefit from. Two, Cardinals have an easy schedule, one of the 3 easiest schedules for running backs this year, and just overall one of the easiest schedules for team context standpoint. We could be looking at really good game scripts for the Cardinals if Kyler just can't, doesn't screw this thing up. So to me, that's the player where I feel like I can still get not bell cow usage, but pretty damn close. There's no concerns. I haven't seen them on the field at the NFL level yet. And I love the blocking scheme, and I love the team context and the schedule. So it's just a lot of things working in his favor for me.
I think I like those points, and I think there's a good chance that he comes out and really smashes out the gate. And I like the schedule and everything. I do think they're going to try to center everything around James Conner in Arizona. But I worry a little bit about Trey Benson seeping in more than last year. And last year he was right in between Derrick Henry and DeAndre Swift in XFP. So if he loses any of that, I just think there's like so much more upside with these young guys. That's where I'm at on Connor. I have Kenneth Walker the highest of this group at RB12, and then Marion Hampton is 13. We're going to talk about him after this. We both have him at 13. I think he's just a rock solid pick. Then I have RJ Harvey and Travion Henderson, followed by Kyron Williams, James Cook, and James Conner. So I have him all the way down at RB18, which is much lower than you. And it's mostly just that I feel better going for the upside guys, and Connor fits into a different group. For me, he's kind of in the Isaiah Pacheco, Tony Pollard, Chuba Hubbard group, but he's like clearly better than them, I like the bet a lot more there. So I'm fine taking him, especially in an auction if you get him cheap, like you mentioned, but I can't do it when it comes to I'm looking at Harvey, I'm looking at Henderson. I just want as much of those players as possible because I think they could have such huge seasons. We've talked about them a lot. You can find that at various points throughout the Beyond the Box Score history. Do go back and check out a lot of those evergreen, all those, literally every episode we've made, I think, other than maybe some of the ADP stuff that has changed, is going to be really relevant stats that you can still enjoy and benefit from now. I do want to talk about Kenneth Walker because I'm way higher than you and consensus. I don't think you're necessarily even low on him.
I think I am low versus consensus still, to be honest.
You've got him at RB16, right. So ahead of Harvey, ahead of Travion. I've got him at RB12. Okay. So first, I want to start with a cool stat from our guy Ryan Heath. So he has XFP, which we mentioned several times here, per team play, which is very cool to look at overall running back fantasy opportunity. Christian McCaffrey since 2021 is number 1, of course. Number 3 is Alvin Kamara. Not a surprise there. Number 4, Joe Mixon. He's really been crazy, the workload that he's gotten. Number 5 is Josh Jacobs. You might have noticed that I skipped over number 2. That's Clint Kubiak's RB1, just in a bucket. Clint Kubiak's RB1, right up there with CMC and Alvin Kamara. And I think that's the starting point for Kenneth Walker. Everybody knows that he's good and worries about health. But I don't know if people realize how good the role could be. And that's why I'm so excited about him, is I think, there were a lot of targets last year and that could only increase with Kubiak, who loves to get the screen game going. And I want to talk about Alvin Kamara. So what we saw from Kamara last year with Kubiak was beyond what we've ever seen from Kamara as a rusher in his career at any point. His explosive run rate was the highest it's been since 2020, which is pretty crazy given the stage of his career that he's in. He was running back 1 in XFP per game. He was one of just 3 running backs, Derrick Henry and Joe Mixon being the other ones, to account for over 90% of the running back rushes inside the 5. So we've seen Kubiak really focus on one person. He had 198 yards and 4 touchdowns on the ground in weeks 1 and 2, straight out the gate, just completely crushing on the ground. In games that Derek Carr played, he averaged 82 rushing yards and 20.4 PPR points. 82 rushing yards for Alvin Kamara is not similar to anything we've ever seen before. That was a 9 or 10 game sample size with Carr. He's never averaged more than 70 rushing yards in a game. I filtered to only include games that he started and finished throughout his career. His career average was 62 rushing yards per game. In his best season, 2020, the average was 69 rushing yards per game. I think there was something happening last year with the run game, and we've seen this in the preseason as well, where they're just moving people easily. Seattle with Clint Kubiak, there was something happening there that was like elevating Alvin Kamara's rushing beyond anything we've ever seen before. And I do think it's really relevant because he had fallen off as a rusher over the past few years.
Right.
It was a lot of these 3.5 yard per rush seasons from Kamara. And then all of a sudden he looks like Superman last year in this outside zone scheme with an offensive line that nobody really had high expectations for with the Saints. And so that's the upside case for Kenneth Walker. Of course, he has to stay healthy, but it could be receiving and it could be really, really good efficiency on the ground if the system is as good as, it has looked. It's a risky bet because we have such a small sample size on Kubiak, but man, everything we've seen from Clint Kubiak is so exciting.
I totally get that. And I think, what I've learned, Jacob, I said earlier in the show that you and I are very aligned on the idea of drafting for upside. I was wrong. You are more of an upside drafter even than myself. You really prioritize it in your rankings and in how you shape your teams. I tend to have a few more bets on the James Conner types. And I want to correct one thing I saw in the comments. He said we didn't speak on this player a lot. Maybe we can touch on him later. I think it's fine. I don't think either of us have strong opinions. Kyren Williams, I do have ranked above James Conner. Somebody said I have him, and I'm sure Jacob does as well. And Jacob has Kyren in a fine spot. We're just not typically more excited on Kyren than other players that we're discussing. As far as Walker goes, let's talk about him, Jacob. I understand I'm going to be probably behind consensus on this player. While the upside is all there, you did the case, you broke it down strongly here. And I think the talent, which we didn't even maybe get into as much, is one thing to discuss as well. This is a player at Michigan State who was phenomenal on tape and has proven at the NFL level and showed even last year, Jacob, what he could do if you actually involve him in the passing game, right? Like, and get him more involved there. My concerns is the injury situation and just how often he's been injured in his NFL career. And that he's one of these guys that I discussed earlier. Like, he has an injury already. These already injured guys, it's very difficult for me to come around on, especially with a history of injuries. And that's just like, even Tajay Spears, a guy who I loved, Jacob, earlier this summer, I haven't clicked him, and he falls and falls and falls because I'm like, do I want to draft a guy coming off a high ankle sprain when I watched Saquon Barkley return a few seasons ago to the Giants and just be a shell of himself off the high ankle? So for me, it's really just injury based with him.
Totally fair. All right. Let's talk about Kyren. RB6 in XFP per game. Just real quickly, RB6 in XFP per game. That's what we've seen, throughout his tenure as a starter. I have him at RB16. You have him at RB14. That is a little bit low relative to consensus. For me, it's just upside, a little bit of nervousness about the Rams' offensive environment. And then some of the quotes we've seen and heard from McVay this offseason about wanting to change things up a bit in the run game. But here we are again, saying basically what we said last year, all those kind of similar things, except for we didn't have the Stafford concerns. Do you think we might be too low on Kyren?
I think we could definitely be too low on Kyren, to be quite frank with you. And he's been a blind spot player for me since he was drafted into the NFL, if I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, I just don't know how he gets to a huge upside season, and there are ways where it could come crashing down. And so I just never want to pick him. That's kind of where I'm at. He literally like the lowest receiving like per opportunity numbers at the running back
receiving
position.
Upside, no big play upside. It's just pure volume and touchdowns and a bet on that offense.
I got another cool stat from Ryan Heath. This is in reference to Amari Hampton. Running back selected on day one with a 95 or better SPORK athleticism score since 2015. It's just Hampton and Saquon Barkley. Saquon went on to score the most fantasy points by rookie running back of all time. If you look at 90th percentile or better running backs that were drafted day one, they were really, really productive for fantasy. That's a really simple way to look at it, just being like, this guy's big and athletic and awesome, But it's like, yeah, that's basically where we're at. I think he's a great pick in round 3. I think running back 13, where we have him, is totally fair. The only reason he's not higher for me is I worry he doesn't have very much receiving upside. Is that basically where you're at?
So I'm trying to think if I have him ranked lower than I was looking as you were discussing that. If I have him ranked, I have him pretty high up at RB13. I don't feel like that's too low, but I do have him outside that tier of Bucky Irving, James Cook, and those players that I like a lot. I think the concern for me mostly here, Jacob, is the Rashawn Slater injury. I just don't know what that situation is going to look like at tackle. They have a player in there who's a veteran who they believe in, but I don't necessarily know if that will be a successful play for them. And I've seen some of the stats with and without Slater. Slater's their best move lineman. He gets to the second level. He creates a lot of opportunities, or he did at least for Dobbins last season. They can move through that. Teams have moved through tackle injuries. Look, the 49ers backup running backs were pretty productive even when Trent Williams wasn't on the field last year. It's not the be all end all, Jacob. And as far as Hampton goes, I really regret I haven't drafted him a lot so far this year. And it makes no sense because I loved him as a prospect. When we first talked about him, like back in the day before we even had this show earlier this summer during draft season, I told you I feel like he's Jonathan Taylor with more power, a more powerful version of Jonathan Taylor, a prospect who I loved. And they reminded me of similar players, plus a much better receiving profile. He only had 2 drops over his last 2 seasons with North Carolina. I believe that was on close to 80 targets over the last 2 seasons. So there's upside in the passing game for Hampton. He's definitely a player I want to get in my final drafts coming up in these weekends, and we're going to see if I can do that. But for some reason, I've missed out on him.
This later is a great point to make. That's definitely, like, I've moved all the Chargers down since then. I'm still okay taking him in round 3 because I think the talent is so good that I want to bet on it, and I think the Chargers still could be good. But it does have me a little bit concerned. And I get it if anybody wants to push somebody that they really like Travion or something above him. I wouldn't blame you for that. The last guy we need to hit on, this is just classic that we've gone through 15 or so running backs and forgotten about him, is Jonathan Taylor. He is kind of the forgotten man. He is one of 3 running backs to average over 100 yards per game on the ground last year with Saquon and Derrick Henry. My buddy Jared Small's got cool stats about him and Anthony Richardson. When Anthony Richardson's been off the field, he's averaged way more XFP and actual fantasy points, 16.8 PPR points per game with Richardson compared to 22 per game without Richardson last year. Are you buying that having Daniel Jones in there could help him?
I mean, it should help him just from the sense of the red zone, right? Like, he doesn't have Richardson stealing touchdowns. Jones early in his career ran for a few, doesn't run for as many. I don't think we're too low on him. I have him my tier 3 up there. I just think with Taylor, he's ranked right where he should be.
Yeah, I have him at 11. Dan has him at 9. I've got him just behind Josh Jacobs. I think it's tough to push him much higher than that, but he's a good pick. He is. All right. I think we are pretty good here then. We've gotten through most of our, top 15 or so. Josh, could we get the running backs 13 through 24 on the board here? Nice. All right. Such cool graphics. Love to see this. Beyond the box score, leveling up. James Cook, RB13. Kenneth Walker, RB14 is where we came when we combined our 2 rankings. Kyron Williams, RB15. RJ Harvey, RB16. James Conner, Travion Henderson. And then Tony Pollard is where we've arrived at RB19. Pollard is a really interesting one. I think he was so much better last year than people realize.
Yep.
A league high 67% of Pollard's yards came after contact. That's higher than any qualified running back. This is an interesting stat. This stat, the player who stood out to me when I looked at the 2023 data within this lens was Chuba Hubbard. Chuba Hubbard crushed in this metric in 2023, and then went on to have a big breakout in 2024. He was RB4 in this metric behind only Breece Hall, Derrick Henry, and Saquon Barkley in 2023. In 2024, Tony Pollard had the best percentage of his total yards that came after contact. The offense could be a lot better. The offensive line could be a lot better. And so I think this is a reasonable range to have Pollard. You have him very high, though. You have got Pollard ahead of a lot of the guys we talked about earlier at RB17. So I'm much lower than you. Do you have anything you want to add on Pollard?
Massive Pollard fan. You did a great job breaking it down, but I'll just add the team level context. I'm a huge believer in Callahan. I think he's one of the 3 defining offensive line coaches left in the NFL, and they've drafted a lot of offensive line talent there over the last 2 seasons. Combine those 2 things, we could be looking at a lot of production in run game. Then simply for me, we're not, or maybe we are, but let's factor in the Cam Ward jump, right? Like, having Will Levis and Mason Rudolph running offense means no scoring opportunities really, and very few, possessions that we can be proud of, in my opinion, especially with Levis on the field. But now we move to Cam Ward, there could be a lot of excitement in that offense, or at least more, Jacob. And then finally, the last thing is Spears, high ankle sprain. Who knows when he'll come back from that? I think I just read that he's going to be placed on IR to start the season. Like, we'd be looking at a legit workhorse role with a good offensive line and a better offense. To me, that pushes him potentially. I may think I'm maybe even too low on him, honestly.
This is a real sicko note, but do you think that Khalil Mullings could cut into goal line work?
That's something that I can't predict right now. But if that's the case, then it really deflates his value.
You know that we have analyzed and overanalyzed things when I'm asking you questions like that.
Yeah, if we're talking about Mullings, we're in the deep zone.
Let's talk about Chuba Hubbard. One of the absolute best rushers in the NFL as of late. I measured the discrepancy between running backs and their running back teammates in terms of success rate. Over the past 2 years, Chuba's number 1. So he has been the most successful relative to his teammates of any running back, followed by Kyron Williams, Alvin Kamara, Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey, Devon Achane. I think it's a pretty good stat, and he's number 1 in it. Another way to measure that is if you look at like EPA per play. The Panthers last year were 25th in EPA per dropback, 24th in EPA per rush when it was a running back that wasn't Hubbard. When it was Hubbard, they were 4th in EPA per running back rush. Like, this is not an offense that's been good, but when Hubbard's getting the ball, they actually are pretty good. And so I don't want to be too low on him, but I do have him at RB23. You have him at RB21. We're talking about full PPR rankings here. The guys I have ahead of him are Kamara, James Conner, Pacheco, Tony Pollard. Breece Hall maybe is the one that will be a sticking point for people. Do you have any thoughts on Breece Hall? You have him lower at 23, so you do have Hubbard ahead of him.
Yeah, I have Hubbard ahead of him. I definitely feel like there's a chance we can be too low on Hubbard based on the team context. We're expecting a jump from the Panthers offense. For Breece, he's not a player I've drafted at all this season. I have him down at 23, but I don't even know if I feel comfortable drafting him. The case for Breece is scaring me. Like, the good case is the Jets offensive line has added talent. They should be a run first team. Good. The bad case is Braylon Allen's already clear part of that offense, may get all the red zone opportunities, got the short yardage opportunities in the preseason. Then what is left for Breece? Like, how does Breece get his points? Big plays, which we haven't seen since his injuries, or receptions, which have come more than you'd think with Justin Fields. But ultimately, I don't know if they'll be a big part of this offense. So I just am scared of where the points are coming from with Breece. I know the name is big, and at one point he was an explosive, amazing player. But also the final thing, dude, it's like they want to run more manpower and gap. Breece was great at Iowa State and with the Jets when he was running zone, and he's a zone runner. So I don't even love the fit from the blocking scheme standpoint. I can't get around to Breece Hall.
I think that's fair. I've lowered him for sure. I do think there are paths to upside for Breece. Like, I gave that yards after contact stat earlier. He was number 1 in that stat in 2023. Wow. We've seen him be
in 23, you said?
Yes.
Yeah.
We've seen him be really, really good at points in his career, and he's still a young guy. So, like, if we get some version of that and the run blocking is better, and Justin Fields, like you mentioned, actually has thrown to running backs more than people realize. He's been above league average in terms of check down rate to the running back position over each of the past 2 years. That's something that's changed a little bit with him. It could end up being like, oh yeah, Breece Hall was the guy that we drafted in the first round last year. Like, that's when I look at running backs this late, I think he's near the top of like having that kind of upside. But I don't even still, I don't draft him very often. I rarely find myself wanting to draft him. I'd rather just draft George Pickens or Tedor McMillan or something like that in the same range.
Sure.
All right, to close things out here, Isaiah Pacheco at RB21, Alvin Kamara at RB22, and DeAndre Swift surprised me a little bit at RB24. So that must be much higher than I have him. You have Pacheco and Kamara in tier 5 with Hubbard, same tier as Harvey and Henderson and Pollard and those guys. And then in tier 6, which you labeled the steepest drop off of any tier, is from 5 to 6. You then have Breece Hall, followed by DeAndre Swift, and then a bunch of guys that we'll get to after our next break. That's Tyron Tracy, Caleb Johnson, Jalen Warren, players like that.
Sure.
So you're not necessarily high on Swift, are you? Or
I'm not very high on Swift.
Okay.
I feel like I'm right at consensus though with where the rankings have gone and where he comes off boards, especially. Look, the upside case for Swift is what if he has a big role and the offense takes a massive jump with Ben Johnson? The downside case is he hasn't been a very good player in his career, doesn't have great vision. Their offensive line hasn't meshed together the way I hoped and expected it would this preseason and summer, especially at tackle. And we don't know necessarily if this offense is going to hit the ground running. And at what point, do we worry about a Roshan Johnson or a Kyle Monungai taking red zone opportunities, which would, in my opinion, almost destroy his value from a fantasy standpoint. Go ahead.
Talk me through Swift over Aaron Jones and David Montgomery.
So Swift over Aaron Jones for me is a bet on Jordan Mason playing a bigger role in that offense, and Jones, a bet against Jones's age.
You think Swift probably has the highest chance to get like a large percentage of his backfield touches of that group? Okay.
Yeah, so of that group, he has by far and away the larger percentage to get the volume, and I'm a volume-based drafter in a lot of ways.
I think there's a group here that's kind of like small win running backs.
Sure.
That people would maybe put Pollard into, but we have him higher. But it's like Jones, Montgomery, Travis Etienne, Jalen Warren.
Yes.
And Swift, and I have Swift the lowest of that group, but you have him the highest of that group.
Yeah.
And
just because of, it's just what you said. It's just, I think he has the best chance to get the most volume out of all those backs by far.
That's fair. I think there's receiving upside with Etienne that he doesn't maybe have. And I also just like other than Pittsburgh, maybe I need to move Warren behind him. other than Pittsburgh, when I look at the Vikings, the Lions, and the Jags, like I'm just a lot more excited for those offenses. I am pretty nervous about Caleb and where we're at with the Bears.
Right.
But we could get there. Yeah, if the offense is good and Swift is on the field in the preseason, he's looked like the clear lead back. Like part of that is Mononga got hurt, but when he's been out there, it's like
Roshan's been hurt too. That's been a huge problem for them.
He's been an important part of the offense. Ben Johnson's talked about it. He's like, DeAndre gave us a spark today, like that.
Sure.
I think Ben Johnson's super transparent with the way he talks about things. And lately it kind of seems like out the gate, Swift is probably just going to be the guy. So I wanted to bring him up because I do think I'm too low on him, but our consensus has him.
I want to draft him more, and I haven't drafted him any. Like, I feel like there is some upside.
Yeah, that's what we fell RB24 consensus on DeAndre Swift, or composite. I keep saying consensus. The composite between Dan and I think that's a good range for him to be in. Do you have any thoughts on Pacheco? I feel like he's somebody who could be just too cheap. My only real concern with Pacheco is that he could get hurt on any play because of the way he runs. But if he's healthy, I think he's going to have a really big year. Like, he's looked explosive this preseason. I think he's going to be a featured part, and we're pretty excited about the Chiefs' offense. The offensive line has looked fantastic this preseason against other starting, talent. Like, I think he might just be way too low, honestly.
I feel the same way, man. I feel like I love Pacheco and I want to take him this year. I haven't drafted any of him either. I don't draft this tier of running backs a lot because I'm usually building out with what I really just like, that first, second, and third tier of running backs. And I buy one of those in my auction. So then this tier, in auctions, Jacob, these guys will go for between 10 and 16. And that's the same range where I can get like Pickens, Ted McMillan, so I'm just taking those guys over these backs every single time based on how I form my roster. So it's been a problem, but I'm with you. Pacheco has real upside this year. The one concern would obviously be like, where are the touchdowns coming from? I think it's always Pacheco's concern, the touchdowns and the receptions. And if he's not that back that doesn't get all the red zone or even a lot of the red zone, and he's not that back that's majorly involved in the passing game, we're relying on him to just be hyper efficient like he has been and explosive, which he can be, but then you also factor in the injury. So it's just not a bet I'll make over like the Ted McMillans or the George Pickens of the world.
Yeah. I've got some real Azer stats here. I'm looking at a 2-week sample size.
But that's even beyond an Azer stat.
Out the gate, 70% of the running back rushes from inside the 10 went to Pacheco. We saw him more involved in the receiving game. He was RB5 in XFP through the first 2 weeks. And it's just like, I think that was kind of the role. And they drafted Brashard Smith, who all the sickos are excited about, but he really hasn't been able to do anything this preseason. They've even been linked to looking at maybe getting a receiving back in the trade market or something like that. And so I kind of just feel like it's going to be Pacheco to start things off. Playing 60-70% of the snaps. And if he plays well, then all of a sudden he's just like one of the clearest values.
Yeah, I can see that case for sure. And I love the team context. You know that.
Yeah. Okay. Let's run through. Is there anything else you want to, let's do listener questions before we take our next break, and then we can finish up here.
All right. So yeah, we promised we would start reading some questions from the iTunes reviews, and they're rolling in fast. But remember, we're going to do most of these reviews on next show, on a show later this week. But I want to throw two out there for us today, Jacob, because we promised we would. And thank you so much. Please leave a rating and review on iTunes. If you leave a 5-star rating on iTunes and leave a question in the review, we will get to them all and answer them all at some point. We hope to, at least. So this one comes from an avid listener to the show and a friend of mine. So he does get the first read, but not because he's my friend, Jacob. It's because he listens to every show and he downloads every show, and he left a 5-star rating review. And it's S. Banks. He says, "Thank you for making this happen. Finally, Dan and Jacobs get their own show. Gibbs is a content maven and quick with data to support his analysis. Dan is electric with takes that keep you on your toes. My new favorite fantasy show. Can't wait to repeat as champion. He did win my home league last year with all this great breakdown and knowledge. Love the newsletter too. Question for Gibbs. If you were in a league with Dan, what player would you make sure he does not get to draft in his auction?"
That is a really good question. George Pickens comes to mind. Man, that's a good question. There's somebody recently that I swear I took as a spite pick because you took somebody who had made me mad. I tried to
draft we did together.
Yes, we just did a draft and you took a receiver that didn't even make any sense for your team. And I was like, well, I'm taking this guy. I don't remember who it was. I feel like it was maybe Jordan Mason, but I don't think you're even that high on Mason, are you?
I'm not, no.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm thinking of. I'm going to have to go with Pickens.
Okay, so it's funny. Quick aside, we don't have that much time left, but quick aside, and Jacob is going to complete the show. I'm going to jump off at some point to go on to something else only for today. This will be the only time that happens, and Jacob will wrap up. I do want to get some late guys, but quick aside, me and Steve were in a bidding war for Pickens, and Steve had all the money at the time. He had saved his money. He fell off, gave me Pickens, which kind of allowed him to then clean up on all the other values. But Jacob, I needed to bring this up to you on today's show. We're at the end of the draft, a little bit of money left for each of us. We're all targeting one player. It's me versus Steve, the guy I just read the review, and Bashal Tutin's name comes up. I go 1, he goes 2. I go 3, he goes 4. I go 5. The auctioneer goes going once, going twice. So 6. And our rule is if the word sold is not completed, it counts. So I lost Bashal Tutin. 5 was my max bid, and he last second took him, and I'm still devastated over that.
Steve-Old. Very, very nice.
Steve-Old. Yeah, that's a little what was that from? What's that show?
That's Arrested Development.
Oh, come on. One of the best shows ever. All right, let's get back into these rankings. Got a few more minutes to roll through some guys, and Jacob's going to clean up at the end of the show and finish us off today. But we are going to get to more players because I do want to talk some of these late round guys as well. So where are we at right now in the rankings, Jacob?
Yeah, composite rankings, we hit on DeAndre Swift, who's 24th. That's followed by David Montgomery, Jalen Warren, Aaron Jones, Tyrone Tracy, Caleb Johnson, Travis Etienne. And the chat has got to be just losing it at this point because we've not mentioned Bill Krosky-Merritt.
I know.
Dan,
unfortunately, I have him ranked so low.
11 spots lower than me. I'm here to represent the brand. I have Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt at RB 30. Dan has him at RB 41. Defend yourself.
Pain. I hate to do this to the brand. I hate to do this to you specifically, Jacob. I just have a little bit more concerns about his role in the offense than the players I have ranked above him. With Krosky-Merritt, love him. And thank you to those who shouted us out earlier and said, we really helped you get him in Dynasty earlier than anyone knew about him. But I'm still concerned Chris Rodriguez will play a role in this offense. And if it's a 3-headed RBC there, running back, or RBBC, running back by committee there, Jacob, it's a concern of mine in drafting him. So I can get on board with drafting him over the Jags RBBC maybe, right? And I don't necessarily know if I have him ranked above them right now. But that's really the range of back that I see him in based on the situation. Now, it could all prove moot, right? What if he does get the start week 1 and he's just like the featured player in that offense and Eckler comes in? But if not, what if the situation is Eckler's still the guy they trust in 4-minute offense? Eckler's still the guy they trust in no huddle up tempo. Eckler's the guy they trust to protect Jaden Daniels. That's my concern there. It's really just a playing time issue for me. It's not a talent issue.
Yeah, if I can share my screen here, I've got Bill Krosky-Merritt and Austin Eckler right next to each other. We basically flip-flop, or you're 10 spots ahead of me on Eckler. I'm 10 spots ahead of you on JCM. And it's, again, like so many of these debates have come down to, give me the freaking upside. What's Austin Eckler really going to do for me in 2025? I don't know. Maybe he's like a flex, and he's a good solid flex PPR that you got late. That's great. If you're drafting like an idiot like me and you're drafting every single pick for upside, you need some players like that to fill in. But I really think we could see a big role for JCM out the gate. And you've seen, man, how electric what we're getting online is. He's interacting with the fantasy community. Everybody's loving it. The fantasy footballers are talking about him at this point and joking around with Bill online. Like, it's only going to keep growing if he gets opportunities, I think. And we loved the talent. This isn't just a meme. Like, we loved the talent way back in April, and so here we are. I am sure as hell not going to be the low guy on JCM.
And I hope I'm not. I don't think I am ultimately the low guy on him league-wide. I think maybe, obviously, with us, I am. And look, I totally get it. Again, I have no concerns with the talent and no concerns with the team context. Like, if he plays a big role, he's going to break fantasy and he's going to be and it's another league-winning pick. I think we just differ a little bit on prioritizing the league-winning picks. I think that's as simple as that.
All righty. Anybody else outside the top 24 in our composite that caught your eye? Do you want me to run through them again, or do you have somebody in mind?
No, I have 3 players in mind that I'm higher on than you. So I want to make the case for them and then hear your take. And we only have a little bit of limited time, so I'm going to make a quick case for them. The first is J.K. Dobbins. I've been much higher than you much higher on him than you all draft season. And while I love RJ Harvey, I also love J.K. Dobbins too. I love all Sean Payton running backs. I made this case on multiple FFT shows throughout the years, and I shout out Dave Richard. I had amazing research on this when Sean Payton got traded from the Saints to the Broncos. Just the quality production of the running backs in Sean Payton's offenses. It's not just one. It's always more than one. Even last season, we saw targets flowing to Javonte Williams. I think J.K. Dobbins and RJ Harvey are going to be great values. And RJ Harvey is the one that costs a lot. J.K. Dobbins is the one that sits at the end of drafts and you could snag at a really cheap price. Who knows? Dobbins could have a big role in this offense. Maybe they trust him on passing downs. Maybe they trust him in the red zone where he's really good with the Chargers, I thought, last season. Generally speaking, Jacob, I thought J.K. Dobbins was really good on tape last season. He's one of my Schneier guys as far as reading the runs, vision, production from that standpoint, yards created before contact. Can you process as a running back? I've always touted him in that regard. And so he's just a player I'm not going to quit on when he's moving to Sean Payton. I love that. I like it better than his role last year with the Chargers. Maybe that was a more touches role, but this is a more valuable touches role in the passing game. So that's my first guy. Do you have anything on that?
I think that you're steaming up the talent a little bit more than I would like to.
Okay.
Maybe that was just the offensive line to blame, but their run game really struggled last year. And outside of a few big plays early on, I think Dobbins was a below average running back.
Well, after the injury you're talking about mostly, or just even before the injury?
Yeah, I guess we could say injury is the reason why. I don't really know for sure, but that's fair. I have him 6 spots below consensus. Dan is about 5 or 6 spots ahead of consensus is where we're at on
Okay,
Dobbins.
the next guy we'll do is Charbonnet. I think this one's pretty self-explanatory and simple. I'm lower on Walker than you, and I'm higher on Charbonnet. Always loved the talent of Charbonnet, man. His film at UCLA was so fun, and I thought he looked great so far in this new system in the preseason. One thing I always remembered about watching him at UCLA, and that was when Chip Kelly was there, by the way, he was great behind zone and power gap schemes. I felt like he was just as good as a zone runner. So I think this system will actually help him and fit him. It all depends on obviously Walker's health. If Walker goes down, though, I think Charbonnet is an absolute league winner for you. And so he's a priority play for me at the end of drafts.
Yeah, definitely check out what I said about Walker earlier, like all the stuff. Charbonnet doesn't have as good of outside zone rushing splits as Walker, where that's like been Walker's specialty. But all the other stuff in terms of how Clint Kubiak boosts the running back applies to him as well. He would be a huge smash if he took the role.
Yeah, sure. And then one more thing, by the way, before we get into the next guy, I did see this in the comments. Only 100 likes on this video. Are you guys kidding me? Hover that hand over that mouse, like I've told you before, and hit that like button. What are we joking here? Like 100 likes? Come on, we're going an hour and a half on running backs. Give us a like. It's all you can do. It's the least you can do. All right, that's my plea to the listeners. We love you guys. I'm not knocking you guys at all. But for those watching, if you do enjoy this content, all I ask is that you hit the like button. Anyway, the last player is Caleb Johnson. This is just one, Jacob, where I almost look at it like 30,000-foot view. Before any of the summer started, I loved Caleb Johnson because I thought he was the perfect fit for an outside zone blocking scheme. And that's what Arthur Smith likes to lean on. Then all this negativity happened in the preseason and everyone just fell off. Like he fell in the rankings. No one's buying him in auctions. He goes for nothing. I don't want to let the preseason and summer totally cloud my opinion of this player from all the work that I put in watching his tape. So that's really where I'm at there.
Yeah, that's probably a good call. I've dropped him because I just got a number of concerns from a role standpoint. I think the best case for Caleb Johnson is that what we thought going into the year comes to fruition. He's the offensive engine on the ground, but I'm not very confident in the offense to be playing with leads all that often.
Sure.
But it could, it's Mike Tomlin, man. It absolutely could. That's basically what he does is he's like at absolute worst going to be 9-7 or whatever.
Yeah, 9-8.
9-8 now. Yeah. So that's totally fair on Johnson. I just have a hard time seeing him giving us much upside because I don't think that there's much opportunity for more than 8 or 10 touchdowns in this offense. And I think he's going to have a really hard time getting more than like 20 or 30 receptions. I don't think he's going to play hardly any of the passing downs. I think it's possible we're looking at a 3-way split if Kenneth Gainwell is involved in the backfield as well on a bad offense. So I have moved him down lately. I'm getting real excited about Ja'Cory Cross-Merritt. I moved him ahead of him. Bashal Tootin is somebody that Dan and I both love. I have him ahead of him. Even like Tyrone Tracy, I have him 1 spot ahead. I just think, give me the guy who doesn't have, they're both bad offenses. Give me the guy who doesn't have 2 other guys to compete with.
Sure.
And I really like his film too,
Yeah, no, I have Tracy well above of Johnson, I believe. Let's just double check that. I think I'm higher. No, I only am one spot ahead of Johnson, but yeah, so we're on the same page there.
Yeah. Anybody else? Or are you ready to sign off?
Let's go to the next tier. I have a few more minutes here before I have to jump to the next thing. So let's look at these back end backs. We'll give a few thoughts on that, and then Jacob will close out the show.
Okay, so Charbonnet is composite RB 32 for us. Following that up, Jordan Mason RB 33, Bashal Tootin RB 34. I do have Tootin ahead of Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. So does Dan. Just got to shout out our guy there. J.K. Dobbins 35, Tank Bigsby, Dan's guy 36. I actually thought you'd be higher on Bigsby.
Yeah, it's just too many backs to feed, too many mouths to feed there.
Yeah. Bill Krosky-Merritt is next, followed by Austin Eckler. Cam Skattebo, who I think you would have been a lot higher on if he would have got the preseason reps. Pretty nervous about him, but it was good to see him at least get out there, get on the field in the last preseason game. Followed by Trey Benson, Ollie Gordon. I keep pushing him higher, and honestly, I'm getting to the point now where it's like the guys in this range, I feel like there's a better shot that Ollie Gordon ends up really mattering than somebody like Trey Benson or Skattebo even.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, like we'll see with what's going on with HN's health. But even if HN is healthy, we've never really seen it be more than like a 60% of the rushes running back, And so I think Ollie Gordon has clearly moved ahead of Jalen Wright with how well he's played this preseason with Wright, maybe not quite healthy either. So I think he's just going to keep steaming up draft boards, and he's still cheap. I think where we have him ranked here is still pretty aggressive relative to consensus.
Yes.
Joe Mixon is next. Ramondre Stevenson, Dan has at RB 50. That shocked me. I think this is one of the widest variations between our rankings. I have Ramondre at 37, and I don't plan to be high on Ramondre or anything, but
I'm very low on Ramondre.
Hey, there's a real chance that like the team wants him more involved on early downs all year long. I don't know that Trayvon's ever going to like be getting more rushing work through Ramondre. And I thought he looked good at the beginning of the preseason. If he's back to being what we've seen from him at times in his career, the offense is middle of the pack or potentially better. We're extremely bullish on Drake May. Then Ramondre could just be somebody you can start, and there's really nobody in this range that you can start. That's where I'm at with him. And then the other thing is he's one of these backs where it's like it's a split backfield, and so we see that now going in. But if something changes, like if Trayvon were to go down, then this running back has all this contingent upside that he could gain. You get what I'm saying? There's a few backfields like that where it's like the projection is that they'll be splitting it. But at any point, a running back can get hurt, man. It's a freaking violent sport. Last year was the outlier where there were hardly any running back injuries. So that's just something I keep in mind, too, with somebody like this compared to, Joe Mixon or whatever, where it's like they're projected at their peak. They're already getting like basically the max role that they're going to get. Same thing with maybe like Tyrone Tracy or something like that, or DeAndre Swift.
Well, that's true for those players, but the opposite case would be a player we have ranked near him, and I've ranked higher than him is Trey Benson. Because if James Conner goes down, Benson is a league winner versus Ramondre Stevenson has no upside to do that, in my opinion, no matter what happens. And I guess for me, the reason I'm lower on Stevenson is team context mostly. Throughout McDaniel's career, very tricky situations with his running backs. Like if we're just sitting here assuming Ramondre Stevenson is red zone back, that's a bad assumption to make given McDaniel's history as a play caller. So if he's not getting guaranteed all the red zone opportunities, which I don't think he will, early downs is kind of where you hope that he thrives in. But with Henderson, I guess he has this profile, man, as like this super sweet back in space that's electric. He was a pretty damn good runner between the tackles. He was my RB2 overall in this draft class because he was able to run between the tackles. So I think there's still the case to be made, possibly, Jacob, that he just runs away with the job. Now it's still McDaniels. He's going to work in other backs. But then it's like Stevenson is in a lesser role, maybe not getting all red zone, no role in the passing game really, on an offense that you're definitely higher on than me. I'm not as high on you on the Patriots offense. I'm high on May, more long-term even than this year, but I'm not very high on the Patriots offense. Yes, they added Will Campbell. Great. I didn't think he was I thought he was one of the worst top left tackle prospects we've had in the last decade or so, to be quite frank. He has upside potentially to stabilize that line, but they're going rookie left tackle, rookie left guard there, Jacob. That scares me. What scares me even more is Garrett Bradbury is their center. He was not good with the Vikings at all. all the stats bear that out. I assume they just signed him because he's a veteran and he can help Drake May with the calls and learning a new offense. I've seen that storybook play out with the Giants a few times. That's not a playbook I like to follow. I don't want bad players just because they're veterans and they can help you make the calls. So I just have major concerns with that offensive line too. That's why I think I'm lower on Henderson than most.
Yeah, you are. In terms of Benson, how you started that off, Benson versus Stevenson.
I like Benson.
Right. In terms of like those two comparatively in this draft range, Ramondre I have higher, and the same thing could be said for a couple of these other guys who are similarly ranked, like Dylan Sampson and even Joe Mixon.
Sure.
Ramondre I have higher because I do think that you might be able to start him out of the gate. And I would never want to be starting Trey Benson, even if he might have a role out of the gate, but we don't know. I think you might be able to start Ramondre. I think you might be able to start Mixon whenever he's healthy, but we don't really know what's going to happen there. And I think you might be able to start somebody like Dylan Sampson or Jerome Ford out of the gate. And if you can't, if Ramondre, if it's a bigger role for Henderson than we anticipated, you can drop Ramondre, and that's fine where you drafted him, whereas like Benson, you'll be kind of just stuck holding him.
I feel like you can drop. People do get into that mode, Jacob, where they do get stuck holding him. I think you should be dropping those types of players as well. I don't think you need to wait for the injury if it's not happening early on, if you get a good waiver opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. Yeah, but I just think a lot of times people do get stuck holding him. I've done it before.
Yeah. No,
all right, we're deep enough in the show that we're talking about Ramondre Stevenson at length. It seems like a good point to cut it off. Dan's going to get out of here, and I'm going to go take a quick break and be back to wrap up just like the deep names here to let you guys know who Dan and I like in the late rounds.
Love it. Thank you so much to everybody tuning in today for this mega show. Appreciate your support. Please hit the like button. Please also make sure you leave comments, rate and subscribe on iTunes, and subscribe to the show. Other than that, we're going to take a quick break and have a great rest of your day. We'll be back tomorrow.
Here we go. The 2025 CBS Sports NFL schedule is here. 18 glorious Sundays.
He's got his receiver touchdown.
Filled with rematches.
Oh, the play of the year.
And rivalries.
Touchdown, Bengals.
Plus, plenty of superstar showdowns. And an epic matchup between the Chiefs and Cowboys on Thanksgiving. Clear your Sundays beginning September 7th for the NFL on CBS and Paramount Plus.
You can always count on Sundays with the NFL on CBS and Paramount Plus. So even if you can't count on accurate expiration dates,
that is a rookie mistake,
or people appreciating your fashion sense,
Jim, the crowd is not on board here.
You can always count on Sundays with the NFL on CBS, streaming on Paramount Plus.
Glad we wear our good jerseys.
Yeah. Get ready.
Wait a second. I thought we were going tubing.
All 3 Sonic the Hedgehog movies and Knuckles are now streaming on Paramount Plus.
And everyone loves it.
Every adventure.
Just try to keep up.
Every face-off.
This ends now.
And every moment that will have you saying,
"Where have you been my entire life?"
It's showtime!
All 3 Sonic the Hedgehog movies and the entire Sonic universe are now streaming on Paramount Plus.
I wasn't ready to die.
The wait is over.
I need to know what happened.
Discover the mystery everyone's been talking about. School Spirits, every episode of all seasons now streaming on Paramount Plus.
What's up, everybody? Going to finish up, run through the end of our rankings here. If I can get a screen share, please, producer Josh. So the end of this running back rankings is just a really interesting range. And I kind of want to talk through like classifications in terms of like how you want to spend your final picks. It varies, I think, depending on league size, what running backs you drafted leading up to this. All this stuff comes into consideration for me. And so these rankings aren't something you have to stick strictly to, but I do know that rankings matter to people. We're in rankings week, we're in draft season. And so I'm going to give you the names here and kind of talk through each one quickly. We talked about the Washington guys. Of course, Austin Eckler is more likely to be somebody you can start at the beginning of the year. I'm totally fine taking him early, like in the hundreds, 110, 120 overall range. Where Dan has him ranked, I think is reasonable. I think where I have him ranked is like the absolute lowest that he could be. And that's because I worry that he doesn't have the league winning upside that some of these, Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt, Spatial Tootin, the guys that we love and have talked about a lot on the channel they bring a different type of upside if things really break their way. But Eckler is, he's a fantasy-friendly type of running back, and he could get bigger workload than we expect, and he's playing in a good offense. So I definitely don't think he's a bad pick, but I do have him a little bit lower than even like Cam Scatterbo, who does bring an explosiveness and a different type of element, the ability to potentially take over a backfield. And so that's what I prefer if I'm ideally in a position where I can use these remaining bench spots to give upside, to give me shots at something that could be really meaningful down the stretch. That's just kind of a strategical way that I approach the game. So I've got Scatterbo at 35th, Eckler at 41st, and you'll find them right next to each other in our composite rankings. If you're watching on YouTube, you see we're approaching the 30-40 range here. Trey Benson follows them, then Ollie Gordon, Joe Mixon, Ramondre Stevenson, and Braylon Allen. Braylon Allen is a really interesting one. He's been moving up for me. Nothing about his advanced data was all that compelling as a prospect or in his first season. But I do think that everything we've seen this preseason is noteworthy. I don't want to just ignore that. I know the vibes are really bad with the Jets, but the offensive line has looked good. And I think the coaching could be good. And so if this team is able to control the ball, control it with the run game, then I think Allen is somebody who might be useful right away. Like if the role is bigger than we're expecting, he might be somebody you can start in deeper leagues right away. I've watched every run for the running backs this preseason. He's looked better than Breece Hall. And I have a hard time saying that because of my priors. I love Breece Hall, but there have been times where I've seen Breece with lacking vision, and it's just weird to me. And I wonder if there's something to what Dan's said about like the rush scheme fit there. It wouldn't surprise me if Braylon, there's like been a steady drumbeat on him all summer out of training camp. It wouldn't surprise me if at some point he takes on a really prominent role for this offense and as the guy that they can trust to just kind of keep, there's a lot. Can you trust Justin Fields? Can you trust Breece Hall? Like there's a lot of uncertainty in this offense. And at some point it might just kind of hone in on Braylon Allen. So I just want to give the bull case for him because I know he's low in my rankings. But if you're looking for somebody who has upside and maybe can get in and do something for you early, I think Allen or Ollie Gordon or somebody like that, those are the names I would consider. That's why I have them ahead of Trey Benson, who I think is less likely to play a meaningful role in week one. Mixon, I don't want to be high on him, but I ended up much higher than Dan. I've got him in my top 40 running backs. It's just that we don't know what's going on with the injury. Some of it sounds really scary, but it's kind of like what I was talking about with Ramondre Stevenson, where if you don't have an IR spot or whatever, if you need to just cut bait, you can. If it ends up being worse than expected, you can just cut bait. But what if he ends up truly just being the bell cow? Like at some point that could reasonably be the case. In an offense that's middle of the pack, that's just way too cheap to get something like this. It's not like we're talking about Quinshon Judkins, who's going to be on one of the worst offenses in the NFL, and there's the risk. We're talking about a guy who's been, near the top of the league in expected fantasy points, basically any time that we've seen him. And so I don't want to draft Joe Mixon, believe me, but like I've got him at 38. I've got him above a lot of these, trendy guys. And I just did want to bring that up. He falls into the, low end RB3, high end RB4 range in our composite rankings here. Ollie Gordon, definitely go search Jacob Gibbs, Ollie Gordon on Twitter. Honestly, if you've been on Twitter at any point, you've probably seen a lot of steam on Ollie Gordon, but I've got all the cut-ups for you if you want to watch him. He's looked so good. He looks like the guy who won the Dokes Award in 2023, was one of the best running back prospects, looked like he was going to be, a round 2 running back in the NFL draft before his final season there at Oklahoma State. And that Oklahoma State season was a complete outlier last year. It felt like the offense completely gave up. They lost 11 games straight or something at the end of the year. That's just not conducive to running back success. So we see him now. This has truly been the most meaningful change for me this preseason of any player at any position is watching Ollie Gordon, watching Jalen Wright, and just feeling out the vibes in Miami. Our guy, Dave Richard, went to Miami, has been to several of their practices, joint practices, and says there's no clear RB2. And this was weeks ago that he was saying this when, the vibes weren't as bad on Jalen Wright. And now we've seen Ollie Gordon seem to commandingly take that RB2 spot. So I think I've seen him go high in drafts. I think RB2 42 might be low. If you want to push him higher, you can make a pretty compelling case for him over a lot of these guys. Okay. After Ramondre Stevenson and Braylon Allen, we've got Jadon Blue. I have him at RB53. Dan has him at RB38. Dan's been very high on him all along the way. I don't want my ranking here to signal any disbelief in the player. I just think it's really tough to miss time early, and he missed most of the preseason, and now he's hurt again. They're calling it a low ankle sprain, but we really don't know what it will be, when he'll be back. And we see this all the time with rookies where the offense just kind of moves on. It takes a lot of practice and reps to get into the rhythm of the offense and what they're doing there, especially a team that is intending to play for something this year. I think there's a ton of upside with Blue, but I'm not drafting him unless I can stash him on the IR. There's just a lot of running backs in this range that I would take ahead of him because they could amount to something early on. But best case scenario, he brings the receiving skill set and he can be an important part of a good offense. So I get why Dan has him this high. These are full PPR rankings that we're looking at here, but I can't push him ahead of some of these Dylan Sampsons, like premium, I think, lottery tickets like Ray Davis, Will Shipley, where if the starter goes down, they become a pretty dang near every down running back for a good offense. That's where I've landed with Blue. I wanted to be much higher. I got a lot of Blue in Dynasty. But for the purposes of just drafting from this point on, I don't want to be irresponsible in where I'm ranking him. I think you only can draft him if you can stash him. Ray Davis is who's next in our composite rankings. He's actually tied. Him, Jadon Blue, and Dylan Sampson are all tied. I'm higher on both Davis and Sampson. I freaking loved Dylan Sampson's collegiate film. And I did everything that I could to kind of mitigate for the Tennessee-ness of it all, with how there's just so much running room there. When in the small sample size we got of him trying to navigate traffic, I thought that he really did well. He has such fast feet that are always feeling and really good contact balance. You saw that on the preseason catch from Joe Flacco where he spun off two defenders. He's really not easy to get down with arm tackles or not good form tackles. And I think he's somebody who really might steam up, rostered rate boards and free agent waiver wire bids and everything at the beginning of the year if he comes out hot. I have him ahead of Jerome Ford. Dan has that flipped. Jerome Ford is probably more likely to play a big role in week one, but the two did split snaps dead even with the starters in the final preseason game. So, for me, just give me Sampson, whose film I loved. Ford is, these are PPR rankings, so I think I'm probably a little too low on Ford because that's the skill set is receiving. We've seen him do that at a pretty high level. I'm fine pushing him up if you feel like you can get kind of the discount Austin Eckler, Joe Flacco, that we could be passing a ton here. So I'm totally fine with Ford being higher than this, but I just don't know that there's ultimately that much upside with him. Whereas Sampson, I don't know what's going to happen with Judkins. I think it's really interesting and compelling that they took Sampson where they did. There were a lot of running backs on the board, and they took Dylan Sampson after already taking a round 2 running back, and they've got a ton of needs, and still they took Sampson. And so that does speak volumes to me. The fact that they're already treating him like a 1A, 1B in the starting backfield speaks volumes. I think he's one of my favorite late round picks is Dylan Sampson. Ray Davis loves film as well. Anybody who's been around Beyond the Box Score or read the FFT newsletter knows that. I do think that he wouldn't have probably a 3-down back. They do like Ty Johnson there. So I don't want to get irresponsibly high on Ray Davis, but if anything were to happen to James Cook, I think that he would be really good. He was really good when he got the starting opportunity last year. Javonte Williams follows the Cleveland backs and Will Shipley in our composite rankings here. This is a lot lower than consensus. I've seen him go a lot higher than this in drafts. I have him at RB52. Dan has him at RB48. I want to be higher. I loved Javonte early career, but man, he did not look like the same player last year that we saw. I just don't know how much juice there's left in the tank. But in terms of opportunity, this is the absolute cheapest. Is there anybody this cheap that has any realistic role early in the season? There's not. So if you want to go there, that's fine. Could be a good receiving role. We've seen this guy play a lot on passing downs and get targets. I really have a hard time. Give me the upside. That's where I'm at. If you're in a deep league, you need to start Javonte Williams. Then he's probably a better pick than where we have him, but he does fall RB50 in our composite ranks. Just ahead of Tyjae Spears, a favorite of the podcast. I feel like I betrayed Dan here. I have him at RB55. When I look at Tyjae Spears, it's similar to Jadon Blue, but the offense is worse. I think he's a better player than Jadon Blue, but it's like we're already starting the season hurt. We don't have any real semblance of him being a full-time running back. We don't know that he can do that. As easy as it is to get excited about Tyjae Spears, and I get why you would want him in a PPR league, I don't think I'm drafting him basically anywhere. If you can stash him, sure. But there's a lot of guys I would rather stash. If I sort by my rankings here, ahead of Tyjae Spears, you'll find Blue, Javonte Williams, Will Shipley, Jarquez Hunter, which is a difference between me and Dan here, Woody Marks, Taj Brooks, two other players that I have much higher than Dan. I think there's a chance that these players are involved in a change of pace role out the gates. That's Brooks, Marks, and Hunter. Brooks in Cincinnati, Marks in Houston, and Hunter for the Rams. And if their starter goes down, then all of a sudden you've got a running back who could take a lot of work. Especially Brooks and Hunter, I really liked their collegiate profile, and they could take a lot of work in a good offense. And so to me, I just would rather that seems like a better lottery ticket than Spears. It seems like there's a better chance of that hitting if something were to happen to the starter. And I think all of them are pretty much contingent on something happening to the starter, including Spears. Basically all the running backs in this range other than like Javonte Williams. So Dan is much lower on those guys, has them outside of the top 50. I think I like them if you have space to stash somebody away at the bottom of your roster here. A few other guys to mention. Brian Robinson is next, stands much higher than me on him. That makes sense. I mean, Garindo going down, everything that we've heard from the team, he's the clear RB2, and they like wanted to get him in here to back up CMC. I think they've wanted a running back who can kind of keep the offense on track a little bit if CMC goes down. And the guys they drafted, unfortunately, both the undrafted free agent Corey Kiner, who the deep sickos here know and love, and Jordan James have both been hurt this preseason. So they go and get Brian Robinson. If something happens to CMC, Robinson all of a sudden is probably a top 15 or 20 running back in fantasy, basically like just a slightly elevated version of what we've seen from him in the past because he'd be in a better offense. And so he might be just too low in my rankings here, honestly. But I'm not super into the talent. And if Jordan James comes back at some point, I think he could push him. I think Garindo could push him. It could be, if the CMC injury happens late in the year, it could be just like a muddy mix of running backs there that I just don't really want any part of. But there's definitely upside. So after Robinson, we've got Woody Marks, Taj Brooks, Sean Tucker. Don't sleep on Sean Tucker. If you're in deep leagues, this guy's really good. The team loves him. If anything were to happen to the running back in front of him, Tucker could be a league winner. Tyler Algier, same thing, like easiest running back for coaching staff to fall in love with. Just does everything you would ask of him. Tough-nosed runner and really one of the more efficient runners since entering the NFL. I don't think people realize that. If anything were to happen to Bijan Robinson, who gets a ton of work, God forbid, nobody wants that. But if anything were to happen, then Algier would be a really relevant player in an offense that produces a ton of volume. Rachaad White. These are all guys Dan has much higher than me at the end of the draft range. Rachaad White, Roschon Johnson, Najee Harris, Rico Dowdle. Rachaad White is the only one that I think is probably relevant. Maybe Roschon. I have no idea what's going on with Roschon and the Bears. I think he's been hurt, but also we just haven't heard anything from him all off season. But they have clearly defined roles if they're healthy, Rachaad White and Roschon. And so in deep leagues, I think it's good to know about where they're going to be drafted and keep an eye on them because they could be relevant at like minimally. And if you're in a very deep league, they could be somebody you can put into a flex if need be, depending on what the roles look like out of the gate. And if there is an injury, either of them could play a lot more than anticipated because they can play passing downs. That's honestly kind of an overlooked key factor, I think, for fill-in running backs when it comes to like these late round dart throws is like, if they can play passing downs, then they have untapped upside with the snap rate where they could, if filling in, they could get to like a 60% snap rate or something like that. Whereas somebody like Ray Davis, who might not ever get that passing work, maybe can't ever push that high and is totally like relying on getting a bunch of touchdowns and producing with efficiency. So I guess that's probably why Dan has these two higher. I don't ever draft these guys. DJ Giddens is somebody that we both like as a talent a lot and think is like pretty clearly the RB2 right now. Tyler Goodson got hurt for Indianapolis. It seems like it's Giddens' role. And that's relevant because Jonathan Taylor's missed games every single season. To wrap it up, I'll shout out Phil Maffa. Brian Schottenheimer, Dallas coach, has a long history of giving work to backup running backs and to low drafted running backs, guys who kind of come out of nowhere, the Zach Stacy's of the world. Phil Maffa could be next. He's looked pretty good this preseason. I know a lot of people did not like his collegiate film. I thought there was like deceiving burst for somebody who weighs 234 pounds, and he runs with power. And so like, I don't know about the vision so much. I don't know about the receiving so much. I don't know how it might amount to like fantasy goodness necessarily. But there's uncertainty in this backfield. You know, Miles Sanders has been unable to stay healthy as well. And if Javante's dust, like maybe Phil Maffa is just better. You know, that's basically exactly what we saw last year in Dallas. Was nothing really inspired a whole lot of confidence in Rico Dowdle, dating back to his collegiate data, his film. Nothing was all that exciting. And yet it was more exciting than Ezekiel Elliott, right? And so that's kind of, it could be something very similar with Maffa this year. And I mean, who else in this range are you drafting that has a chance to, I mean, right away, Cole and Ollie Gordon kind of, you know, what we've talked about hypothetically with him, where they are getting work and they maybe work their way into a bigger role depending on how things break. So Phil Maffa, there you go. For the sickos, that's it for me. Thank you guys all so much. I'll do a little bit of plug godding here to fill in for Dan. For real, thank you. I really appreciate getting the opportunity to do this. I don't know if Dan realizes this. We were talking the other day. He was, I think, kind of surprised how long I've been doing this. I've been doing this since 2018, 2019. Started trying to like make this a full-time thing all the way back in college in like 2016. And so to be here where like this is what I'm doing in August is like I just get to talk about 60 plus running backs, and I've got a group of people who like love it and love all the sicko stuff. And we've got inside jokes about all these players. Like it's ridiculous. It's like just a blessing and an honor, and not one that I take lightly. It's a privilege, and I really do appreciate y'all. So thanks for all the support. Go check out all of the previous podcasts that we've done. Like really, really good stuff. Dan and I have had a blast doing this, and we feel good about our rankings here. We'll have quarterback and tight end rankings for you tomorrow on Wednesday. And Thursday's show will be wide receiver rankings to wrap things up. I'll be doing my best to be on Twitter and helping anybody that has questions. So keep a lookout for that. If you do have like specific questions about your draft, I'm going to try to carve out as much time as I can heading into this big draft weekend. Definitely subscribe to the FFT newsletter. If you haven't already, it's free. And I'll have rankings updates coming out there. I know there was some complication with the most recent one that I sent out with the links not working. I've got a solution for it, and I'm going to send that out tomorrow on Wednesday. So thank you guys all so much. Take it easy. Beyond the Box Score for Dan, for me. Peace.